Grampian Nation, if you ever wanted to meet someone who runs a triathlon, has managed multinational businesses, and is now an entrepreneur in his own right, hang on. We're coming back with Mike Hudspeth.
In 2013, I coined the name Grampian, and I gave it to your host, Jim Tracy.
Good morning, Grampian Nation. Here we are again. Mike Hudspeth is from the Inland Northwest. That's, for you folks who don't know, that's kind of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana. He is a husband, a father, a follower of Jesus. He is the president of Cathedral Consulting, former president of Starbucks Europe, works as a leader of a boutique M&A firm and a consulting firm up in Spokane, Washington. But he is also a triathlete. Mike, welcome to the Grampian, buddy.
Jim, thanks for the invite. Glad to be on.
All right. Man, I'm proud to call you friend, too. So I can't forget that. So
Absolutely.
So you hail from Spokane, Washington, after tours around the world. Why Spokane?
Why not, right? So I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. Everyone thinks of Seattle, Washington. So I'm on the other side of the state. We have true four seasons. And I grew up actually with strong farming roots within my family. We had up to 10,000 acres that's been in the family for 110 years. And so our roots are literally right outside of Spokane, Washington here. So we've got a lot of family in the area, some of which is moved over to Montana, but strong farming roots in the area. My dad was also a pastor up in this area as well. So we were pretty well involved in the communities. And we love the true four seasons. I love the hot summers. And then also my son and I, the last 5 years, enjoyed the cold winters, backcountry snowmobiling. So we love the risk. We love the thrill as well.
Right on. And there's some good snowmobiling up there. Do you ski or snowboard or anything like that?
I used to be an avid skier, but things get expensive these days and time is precious. And so picking one sport and going deep. So we tend to just snowmobile. And most of what we do is Idaho and Washington. We have at times gone over to Montana, but we found there's so much playground in this area within close proximity.
Yeah, why travel if you don't have to, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. I was going to make snowboarder jokes if you were going to say you were a snowboarder. So that you get your reprieve, man. So
no, not me.
Raised in the Spokane area, and then you went to school where?
Went actually fairly local as well. So community college over north of Seattle. And then I ended up moving back here and graduated from Eastern Washington University with undergrad and then also grad as well. So once again, brought me back to my roots here and absolutely enjoyed it. Great to get my business degree at the same time. That's really what launched me into the restaurant industry because, what you would consider my day job, but certainly not my career, ended up being something that, the Lord led me in. And I just absolutely fell in love with hospitality.
Yeah. So tell us about that. What brand were you, or what brands were you affiliated with over the years? Because there's some pretty cool stories back there somewhere.
Yeah, so in the 90s, 80s and 90s, casual dining restaurants were really the up and coming brands. And so I was on the kind of the mid stage of that growth, joining Applebee's restaurants in my college years. And so I spent about 15 years with Applebee's, started out as a server, great opportunity for flexible schedule, good money, good social circle, and allowed me to be able to pay for my way through college and give me the flexibility I needed. So I did that for 15 years, but those 15 years very quickly put me right into management. And I realized that I was either going to do what I thought was my real job or make something of this. And with the growth that they had going on at that time, I believe Applebee's, the 2 years I remember, they were opening a restaurant every single day for 2 years straight. And so It was hard not to capitalize on that. And so got into management, ran a restaurant as a general manager at 21 years old, and then very quickly got up to area director and then vice president, and just enjoyed every bit of it. I loved working with people. I loved the challenge. I loved growth, and then from there, that moved my family, specifically my wife and I, down to Oregon.
Okay. And then from Oregon, you made a big leap, and a big leap to Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Why? Man, why?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So we used to joke. I think if you can count it, we had said we had only been to two countries, and that was the US and Canada. So those are ones where you're like, okay, well, you're born in the US, you can't count Canada. I would have never dreamed in a million years to travel the world, much less live abroad as well. And so, as you pose, why? That opportunity came up at a time that really had us spinning as well. So I worked for a franchise company. They were one of the largest, certainly the largest in Europe, but they had bought out our franchise in the States. And what they were looking for is transplanting US talent in Europe to help grow and also grow the talent. And so they came to me to move over there, minimum for a stint of 3 to 5 years to run Starbucks, which Starbucks brand at the time, to imagine this, was really a startup over there. So highly aspirational. They had less than 10 locations. If people heard of Starbucks, it was because of the movies. For you and I mean, we knew that it was Seattle based, Pike Place market, well penetrated, certainly by 2010. And so they needed talent. They needed someone who knew the brand and loved the brand. And so my wife and I said, man, we've got a young son, 5 years old. There's probably not very many windows in life where you can say yes and have very few regrets. And so we said,
Yeah.
heck yes. And we took the venture.
And where'd you move to?
We moved to a town probably about the same size as Spokane. It's called Wrocław. It's spelled, though, Wrocław phonetically, and so it's Wroclaw. And it's in the southwest corner of Poland. University city, very vibrant, youthful. There's a lot of energy in that. Of course, if you've been to Europe, most people will know that you have your marketplaces that are thriving. And Wrocław's marketplace was just incredible. So it had a good, vibe to it. It was the headquarters. And I did most of my travel, specifically Central and Eastern Europe, which, the funny thing is you think, wow, you had multiple countries within your span of control. Well, here in the States would say, well, no, you probably had kind of like the Pacific Northwest. That was
Yeah.
its proximity because of how small it was. So it
Yeah.
was fairly easy to travel. It was easy to get around. The largest disparity was just the cultural differences that really challenged me as a leader to think differently. Because in the U.S., I mean, we may have some disparities as to how do the Pacific Northwest folks think differently than the Northeasterners and South. But even then, we're still Americans. Over there, that disparity uh, interjected with past wars,
Oh,
economies,
yeah.
scale, whether or not they're in the union. So I found that with my leadership style, that was a big change for me. For Rachel, I think one of the things that we laughed about going into it and found it to be true is expect the unexpected. If we can change our frame of mind, we actually may be more delighted and find the moment humorous than frustrating. Because there's plenty of situations where I just want to buy my groceries. I just want to go to the bank. And rather than a quick 30 to 45-minute journey, I mean, we're talking hours. And I just thought, wow, this is long. So anyways, the whole experience really took us back a step and caused us to really be humbled in a lot of ways.
Yeah. But you know what? It's really cool to hear that you look at that in a positive fashion, because what you look for, you're probably going to find. if you're hunting positivity, that's probably what you're going to find. So you ended
Yeah.
up as the
Yeah.
president of Starbucks Eastern Europe, and how many stores did that entail at that point when you ended up?
We had somewhere between 10 and 11. I don't remember if one opened before or after I got there. And then as I was departing, just over 3 years later, we had just over, um, well, when I got there, it was 10 to 11 units, two countries. When I left, we had just over 80 and operating in four countries. And we actually were looking to pick up Germany, which was going to be a pretty massive move, along with Serbia as well. So a
Yeah.
lot of growth, a lot of commitment to the brand, and certainly a lot of excitement. So there was, certainly growing pains when you go from 10, 11 units up
Oh
to
yeah.
80 with a vision to get well over into the hundreds.
For sure. So then you decided to move home. Why?
You know, we had a son. He loved since he was a little boy. He loved American football. I mean, he just had it in his blood. He's like, I'm playing football, and as anyone can imagine, there's only one football sport internationally, and it's not American football. Despite all the efforts there, and
Yeah.
so we knew either because my twin brother and I had moved a lot when we were kids because my dad's job. I was fairly sensitive to the idea that I didn't want to move my son a lot, and so we wanted to stay committed to the idea that either we stay in Poland through his years, and there was plenty of opportunity for us to do that, or at 8 years old, maybe it's time to go ahead and look to come back to the US. Yet, I absolutely fell in love with international. I think just the different cultures, the challenge of working with the different walks of life had just really appealed with me. And so I certainly wasn't ready to take that jump back to US soil, but I knew my family needed it. So that's when I took on the role with Chili's. And so we got the best of both worlds. My son played football in Texas, so you can't pick any better place than that. My
Yeah, for
wife's
no
back on
kidding.
U.S. soil, so your normal daily activities are easy. And I got to stay in a role that allowed me to actually experience far more culture exposure than even what I had in Europe.
Right on. And then how many chili stores were you responsible for at that point?
At the when I joined, we had just over 200. When I departed, we had just over 425, and that was in 38 or 39 countries, with plans to develop in five further countries in the next 2 years following that. So,
Yeah.
so there was a lot of travel, a lot of regional density within our exposure as it pertained to our Mexico market was a big market for us. The MENA region, which we consider Middle East and Northern Africa, that was pretty big. And so our big play was we had to get into the Asia Pacific market, China obviously being a big one, and so that became our largest agenda overall. Is how do you get into China, and how do you do it while at the same time protecting the brand?
Yeah, for sure. Because your menus are got to be just dramatically different by the time you're done. Yeah.
Very different. Yeah, yeah. The
Culturally,
way
regionally, specifically to a country, and then a culture within a country when you're talking about China.
Yeah, Jim. So the thing that's quite enlightening for me is when you take something that is so American lifestyle has been almost always quite revered, or let's say for quite some time. There's this aspiration of living the American dream and being able to experience that. So no question, there's a high reception to a U.S. brand coming into their market. However, no question that there's a resistance that they don't take exactly what we have in the U.S. And I'll give you a few, for instance. One most is going to be your menu. So we appreciate high level of sugar content and salt content and big portion sizes. So you go to an Asian market and they look at these portion sizes and they're like, this is like feeds my family. And or sugar, they're looking at it going, this is way too sweet. So we had to do a lot of adaptation through that process. And then the second thing that was posed to us is, and it was posed to us in this way, to give you a for instance, how many times do you go out? How many times, let's say per month, you specifically, do you go out to have Chinese food or Mexican food? If you were to evaluate that, and could be month, three
Yeah,
months, how often would
not
you
even
say?
once a month. Yeah.
Yeah. So reverse that. And that's what we had to break through on the American side. They're Chinese, they eat Chinese food, and it's a special occasion to have American food. So we had to break through that to go, how do you stay true to the brand while at the same time make those adaptations so it's approachable to what their normal cuisine was? And so that was generally our solve.
Yeah, and you're doing this from Texas, and then at some point you decide, hey, I want to get back home. And when was that? Back to Spokane.
Good old COVID. COVID kind of zap things for us. So it was certainly in my wife and I's heart to get back to Spokane. A couple of reasons: parents' health was declining, so getting
Mm.
back home and close to be able to serve their needs. And we surprisingly, the second was we had our son. He asked the basic question, "Hey, given all the places we've moved to, like, what do you consider yourself?" And he's like, "Well, I'm a Texan." And so we thought, a Texan, really? Well, he had never grown up in Spokane. He wasn't born here. So we thought, okay, well, if we're planning to be in Texas forever, then that's fine. If we're not, we better get out of Dodge. And
Yeah,
so,
and who would want to be a
so
Texan?
yeah, well, that's just it. We love Texas, but it was so far away from our family that we knew we wanted to get back up here.
Yeah,
So
sure.
COVID helped us with that process. I will tell you, the biggest blessing that I had and our family had is, prior to COVID, unfortunately, just with all my work travels, I rarely was able to make any one of my son's events, and it just broke my heart. My wife would always try to video me in. I still remember one of them. It was 3 a.m. in the morning. The game's going on, and I'm at 3 a.m. rather, and Texas time was what it was, and so she'd video me in, and so that was always what we had to live through. Moving up here from eighth grade to senior year, I never missed one game. And I was very much a part of my son's life. And it was just such a gift that I certainly will always cherish being able to not only walk alongside with him through those teenage years that can be tough and sometimes defiant, but I think just more importantly, be able to look and go, what was such a passion for him, football. He always knew his dad was there. And as much as I tried not to, you try to coach your son. Well, my son Aaron always had this tendency to kind of look to the sideline. What's dad think? Oh, what's dad think? And so, those are moments that I cherish, and, being able to be there was pretty cool.
Yeah, those are going to be forever memories for both of you, probably. So,
For
you're
sure.
back in Spokane, and you take this gig with Cathedral Consulting, and so tell me, and folks, I act as a senior advisor to Cathedral Consulting, so Mike and I get to work together, and it's really cool. But I'm a free agent, and it's the best of both worlds for me, and I know it is for you as well. Tell us about Cathedral, buddy.
Yeah, so I actually was introduced to Seth Bueckley, who owns Cathedral. We have joint friends through an evangelist, Reed Saunders, and I serve on the Reed Saunders Association board. And so the director introduced me to Seth, and he had thought, Seth's looking for someone that can operate the business. And so that was back in late 20. And I was really trying to just be obedient to, Lord, where do you want me as my next? I didn't know what that looked like, but I certainly wanted to be patient. And so I had the pleasure of joining Cathedral at the time, really at a time that Cathedral needed a far greater support on their back office systems. client experience, and also just expanding overall capacity. And so I spent my first year helping through that process. Seth is quite a visionary, and so trying to keep both feet on the ground while anticipating, those ambitions is, kind of a tug and pull, at
Yeah,
times.
for sure.
So through that, very quickly I went from, getting it to where it's much more operational to, how do we really turn this into a business that's focusing on what we're passionate about.
Hmm.
And I think one of the things is one of our value systems is having the heart of a mentor. And so, I mean, I think working with you, Jim, I think has been one of the more attractive things is that you have a heart for the next generation. You have a heart for
Yeah,
impacting. You have a heart for culture. You have a heart for leadership. And that's really, I think that's the essence of what I would say expresses what our aspiration is at Cathedral. And that's been the most attractive piece for myself is I'm a strong, man of faith. We get to start our days in prayer. We get to come together and lift each other up. We get to encourage each other, but we also get to connect in ways that leverage each other's strength. I mean, I work with amazing leaders like yourself that have great history with access to markets. We get to do things like helping entrepreneurs that are looking to exit their business and or continue to grow it. So on the acquisition side, we get to help lay the groundwork for growth through our strategic planning. And then we also create a community, and that community is through our mastermind groups as well. So that
yeah.
is really rewarding to be a part of that, either directly and or facilitating it indirectly.
Right. And one of the things that I found really amazing is that when you're building a business, you might have partners and stuff like that, but when the push comes to shove, the CEO level executive of any small business is an entrepreneur at heart, and they just need somebody to come alongside them to help them grow, scale, and
Mm.
ideal exit, ideal exit their business, simply because we've never done it before, and
Yeah.
now you get to, having done it before, you get to come alongside someone. So it is an amazing experience, and frankly, it's really good to be able to help people at the end of the day. I mean, that's the best part of it for me anyway.
Well, and I think, Jim, you said, so we had a call the other day, and you said something that I thought was such a great, profound and reminder for entrepreneurs. And appreciating it can be lonely at the top. And I think that expression that you made there, being able to have the advantage to provide not just a service, but a connection for those that do feel lonely at the top. So we're able to be a sounding board, a mentor, a validator, the key attributes that, they look for, or just a community. I mean, when I think of lonely at the top, we operate in a world these days that if you're operating lonely, it's likely because you've chose to be lonely, and it doesn't have to be that way. There's
Yeah.
too many options out there that I think can help them through. And so I feel blessed to be able to be a part of that, and that they do have an openness to it.
Yeah, and sometimes people don't even know there's a way out of the silo that they're in, and that silo
Mm.
has there's an escape hatch on each side of it, and there's somebody waiting on the other side of the door saying, "Hey, that's probably gonna hurt. I've done that before, and that's probably not gonna feel good. So let's try it this way." And the light bulb, boom, goes off. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
the most impactful thing that so I have to back up a minute. You're a triathlete, okay? You're an Ironman guy, and so now everybody knows you're just a bit stark raving crazy. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're gonna swim. You swim 5 miles, is it?
No, heck no. 5 miles, I'd be drowned.
Three
No,
miles
1.2
or
miles.
1.2 miles, okay? And then you
Yeah,
bike
56.
56 miles, so you get a great case of biker's butt, and then you run
Yes.
26 miles, 385 yards. 365 yards or something like that.
Yeah. So this is the 70.3. So it's actually half of everything. So a
Okay.
full would be 2.5 miles. It would be 112 bike and it would be 26. And so take everything and
Okay.
cut it in half, which,
So you're
for
doing
me in
half
itself is enough.
triathlons.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're at the master level, so you're really good at it right now, huh?
Trying.
Well, okay, so trying, what does trying look like? You're training right now. As we talk through your schedule and stuff, and I look at the time that you have to really dedicate yourself and your heart and your efforts and the mental effort above everything else, but to training, tell us what it looks like to train in the pool.
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything, just where I would start is it's probably more of a testament of how bad you want something, and whether that's either like in a triathlete's case, it could be just finishing. In other
Hmm.
cases, it could be being on the podium. If God's blessed you in that level, and in other cases, it could be setting PRs. And I
Yeah.
think it pushes at the Ironman events really push the envelope in so many ways, because you look at the amount of training that you have to endure and try to fit that into the demands of life. There's always going to be some negotiations that you have to make with yourself, sometimes your family, that you have to establish. And so when I break some of those down, there's some discipline that has to come along with that, along with just a lot of technicality. So when I think of the swim, part of that is just I have to. So tomorrow I have my swim, and so I'll swim. I think tomorrow about a mile and a half. But of that mile and a half, some of it's going to be aerobic, and then others are just much more technical routines that I'll go through that perfect my speed. They really get me into a specific zone, and so part of it is that. The other part is I get up at 3:30 in the morning to make it to the pool so I can
Yeah.
start swimming right at 4:50. And so I think there's a lot that goes into that part of it. Now, swim is the easiest, believe it or not, technically to do once you're trained. It sometimes can be psychologically the most daunting because everybody pictures, a whole sea of people getting out there, your goggles getting knocked off, you're going to drown. I'm not sure I'm going to make it. And those are all true. You have that same feeling. I've done,
Yeah.
plenty of
The
events
sharks are
where,
coming after me.
yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, what just touched me? Yeah, that is very true. So you still have those, but you get to a certain point within the event where you're like, okay, I'm calm. My nerves are calm. I'm trusting my training. I'm not going to drown. I think I'm going to actually make it. So
Found my
it's really
rhythm.
just, I found my rhythm, and it's the first one out of the gate. Try to
Yeah.
get through the swim. It's the first one. Once you get to the bike and the swim, you're in routine.
Yeah. Okay. So so you swim a mile and a half, and then what does the biking portion of that look like too? Because everybody thinks
Yeah.
about a
So the
bike and they're
biking,
thinking about a mountain bike these days. And it's
yeah,
not.
the
You're
biking.
really
I
got a
think,
cool road bike.
yeah, and that's just it. Triathlete bikes are designed much different than your road bikes and certainly your mountain bikes. You'll see a difference between some folks will have triathlete bikes. I have a triathlete bike. Some will have just road bikes. The difference between the two is the design of the triathlete bike is a bit more compressed. And so it saves a bit more of your legs when you get off the bike and you do the run, whereas the road bike tends to use up some of your legs a little bit more. The
Okay.
bike is going to burn most of your energy, and it's a strategic game. Most will think, well, it's just mental or it's just physical, and those are truths. But the strategy that you have to be thinking about in the event is the number of calories you are going to burn and exert during the whole event. So, for instance, in the bike, you're taking your salt pellets, you're taking hydration systematically, you're eating more nutrients to make sure that what you are burning out you're putting back in. And so you have that element of the bike ride. And then, of course, if you know your course well, and there's some hills coming up, you are trying to pace yourself to know I can't get my heart rate up
Oh
specifically in
yeah.
certain areas because I could probably do it, but I'm going to pay for it 5 miles down the road.
Yeah.
And saddle, no question, two things that are going to hurt the most, your lower back and your saddle, are the two areas that you'll remember that. You'll remember it.
Yeah. So then you get off and you got to run and you got 13
Yeah.
miles left. What does it feel like when you get off the bike?
Yeah, I think it depends on the day. It depends on how your body responded. There's pros and cons of running versus biking. Biking, you can't stop. You still got to go. Running, I'm tired, so I'm going to stop. So there is a pro and con with that. That I could stop, and if I stop, there could be some significant issues with stopping or consequences. So running's all about. I find it's much more of a mental game because you've already burnt a tremendous amount of your mental and physical capacity. So it becomes much more of now a mental toughness. I tend to play a lot of games with myself, visualizing, can I just make it around the corner without stopping? If my time is going more in my favor, can I hold that for another mile? If I'm behind, can I pick it up just 5 seconds? So those mental
Yeah,
games I'll
catch
play
up.
with myself help me get through the next corner and or the next challenge. And then before I know it, I might be at 10 or 11 miles and I'm like, oh wow, I'm almost to the finish line.
Right on, right on. So, speaking of finish lines, when is your next race? What are you training for right now?
July 20th, 2025. So we have about 7 months or so, 5 hard months and then a taper month. And that's going to be a half Ironman in Salem, Oregon. The why behind that is one, I turn 50 next month. I try to get my identical twin brother to do the event with me, but he has a bad knee, so he's not able to do it. And so my sister-in-law might do it with me. And so it's in Salem, Oregon, where they live. And so we'll have a nice community and family of people that will be down there with me.
And supporting the event. All right. Well, good luck with that, buddy.
Yeah,
So, Mike, we're
thank
going to
you.
close this thing out. And like always, the Grampian always asks somebody, if you were looking back and you were looking at a kid about your age, just getting ready to get out of high school or college, what piece of advice, with all of your international experience and all of the training experience, what piece of advice would you give to a kid who was looking around and wondering, what do I do next and how?
Mm. There's so I'm leading a, discipleship group right now, and I think there's one of the things that's probably been the most impressed upon my heart that I've been sharing, and I do share it with this young group of men, and it goes like this: in the Bible, we know that we have a few key characters, such as Timothy, Barnabas, and Paul, the Apostle Paul. And I think what's key in this story or this perspective is that I have a belief that we should, with conviction, always have a Timothy in our life, one that
Ah,
perhaps we're just a season ahead of them. We're able to share a little bit of perspective, speak into their life, love on them, show them around the corner perhaps what life might be like. We should always have fellow challenging disciples like Barnabas in our life that help hold us accountable, ones that we entrust our trust in, that when we do go through rough patches, they're there for us. They
an
encourage us.
encourager.
They lift us
Yeah.
up. And then you have to have a Paul in your life. I think, the Apostle Paul's, are ones that, I've had a gentleman by the name of Gordy McDonald. And Gordy reached out to me, I would say in my late 20s, early 30s, and God just put him on my heart. And he's walked with me every step of the way, at different iterations. absolutely. And I had some tough seasons in my life, and he was there for me. I've had seasons where, you have some good patches, and he was always an encouragement. And so that would be my advice is just, do you have a Timothy in your life? Are you convicted to share and to create that type of experience, ones that, you're doing as well. You're doing it for the Timothys of the world, and take it as a compliment. You are a Paul. So, and so I think that, that's huge. And if you could develop that early on, because I did not do that early on. I think about just the maturing in your spiritual walk, in your walk in life. I think about just how wise you become, how
Yeah.
at peace, how much joy you have in your life, just knowing what life has to serve you.
Right on. So that's a pretty easy model. Have someone ahead of you, have someone a little behind you, and have someone beside you who's going to
Yeah.
encourage you to do the right thing. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, Mike, thanks for coming on the Grampian. We appreciate you. Good luck and good fortune to you. May God favor your swim, bike, run, especially in Salem, and give you a PR. Go, buddy. And Grampian Nation, I hope you're out there rooting for him. Thanks for stopping by the Grampian. This is Jim, and I am out. When you get an opportunity, subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcast.